Good day and greetings from the Great White North. My name is Prickly Poo and welcome to day 159 of a year of change. Today we are going to give you a little bit of sort of good news, I guess. It's sort of a good news, bad news thing. It started out by being a bad news thing, but I don't know if it's good. Anyway, we'll figure it out as we go. A couple of days ago there was a new study that was released showing that, this isn't the good part, not surprisingly, obesity rates for kids between 3 and 19 are the highest that they've ever been. This goes all the way back to the 1970s. So in the past 40, 50 years, this is we've hit our peak at this point, which is not anything really new. We've known this for a long time. We've talked about it a few times as well. The age sort of startles me. The fact that they're studying these as young as 3 years old, and that there are 3-year-olds out there that are considered obese, which is ridiculous. Younger kids, like once they start hitting 8, 9, 10, stuff like that, you kind of understand the eating habits have been pushed on them at this stage. And yeah, that's when I started. And then pretty much just going right through until they're 19. But just having having something that young get classified as obese is ridiculous. Anyway, not surprisingly, they're at their peak at this point. It's the highest that they've ever been. But, and here's the sort of not good, but could be kind of worse news, is that they've noticed that when they've done this long-term study, that the numbers actually haven't been steadily rising. They haven't been going down. But in the past 10 years or so, since like 2005, 2010, somewhere around there. Actually, pretty much since the early 2000s. That number has sort of plateaued. That from between the 70s and the 90s especially, there was this huge spike in childhood obesity. And then after the 1990s, it just sort of started to peter off, and it's pretty much stayed the same. Now, this is still very, very bad. We've got, in the U.S., there's about 17.5% of kids between 3 and 19 are classified as overweight or obese. And in Canada, we're right up there with you. We're around 13%. Now, there are a number of different theories as to why there's that disparity between the two of them. Or discrepancy. No, disparities, right? Maybe. Anyway. Part of it, they think, is that, there are a lot more products that are specifically aimed at kids in the States. They just tend to really sort of push that because they know if you get them when they're young, then you've got a customer for life. And while we still have that here, there are some places where things are a little bit different up in Canada. In Quebec, actually, back in the early 80s, they passed a law that was basically saying that you can't advertise anything, not just food and snacks and stuff like that. You can't advertise any product aimed at a child 13 years or younger. And it's just sort of across the board that way. They can still advertise the product, they just can't advertise, the advertisement can't be geared towards children. So that can't be the target audience of the advertisement. There are still ways around it, of course. They can still advertise stuff, and I think it's just sort of restricted to, it started out with television, and it's just restricted to a certain time period. So there are ways around it, so it's not that they just went, no, you can't advertise it anymore. But of course, things have changed since then. You can advertise on, I think they can advertise on YouTube and stuff like that. But just mainly television, stuff like that. You just can't have it, if someone's watching the commercial, they can't look at it and say, this is obviously aimed at kids. That's the target audience for that. Anyway. They have obviously fought it before, but it was upheld in the Supreme Court of Canada as well in the late 80s. So that they think stuff like that might be part of it. We drink less soda pop than the U.S. Quite a bit, actually. And part of that, I think, is probably because the advertising up here isn't as... What's the word I'm looking for? Aggressive. There we go. I was going to say pushy. But I'm like, it's not quite right. The advertising for candy and pop and junk food and stuff like that isn't really pushed as hard up here as it is down in the States. So they think that might be part of it as well. And then there are, a number of different things, obviously, they haven't looked into it and said, well, this is exactly why there's such a difference. They think that might be part of it, and they haven't really looked into it yet. But anyway, there's at some point or in some way, I think that this is a little encouraging. Is that, it's not great, obviously, that we've sort of hit a plateau and that we aren't getting any fatter as kids, but it's still bad that we're as high as we are. We've got 1 in 6, roughly, people, like children, are obese, and that's just going to get, we are getting more and more and more. Now, they've broken them up into different age groups, and I don't know what the numbers are for those. I will put a link in the description below, though, to the news stories that you can take a look at it, as well as just sort of a brief outline of what they were showing as at the different stats for obesity and stuff like that for kids. I'm going to try to keep this one fairly short. I went way over yesterday. I do apologize, so we're going to try to keep today's video a little more streamlined. I'm also dealing with making a very bad decision yesterday, and we'll talk about that this weekend in a little more detail. But the main information that I sort of wanted to get across was that it's one of those things that sort of follows in line with what we've been doing, that no, it's not great, but it could be worse. It's better than than we suspected. It was that we've generally assumed that the obesity rates are going up and up and up and up and up, just nonstop. And it's a little bit encouraging to know that in the past 10 years or so, that it hasn't really gone up anywhere. We still have a huge number of obese kids out there. But the fact that we've sort of hit a plateau and that it's not rising is a bit encouraging. The issue, of course, now being that, okay, we know what the issue is. We know what the problem is. Now we need to get those numbers down. Because we've talked about this before many, many times, that we don't start out as being fat in our 40s or 50s. Generally, every now and then you're going to, but generally our eating habits and our exercise routines and stuff like that, they get set when we're very, very young, and we just sort of carry that on. So trying to make those changes, trying to get those numbers down, that's going to be the next step. So that's sort of what they're looking at, really. It's obviously not us. It's like, we can take care of ourselves, and you can take care of your own kids. But I'm not saying, okay, you need to go out and start lowering the obesity rates. I guess, like I say, that the most shocking thing, though, is the fact that this study takes into account children as young as 3. So when you're 3 years old and you've already got those eating habits put into place where you're already looking like us, that's not a good thing. And I think a lot of it is probably just, we talked about this earlier last week, a lot of processed foods and fast foods. And you'll see toddlers in McDonald's eating the food. Not that it's sort of inherently bad because it's not really good for you, but not that, okay, well, you ate at McDonald's once when you were 2 and that's why you're fat. But just sort of getting away from the home-cooked meals sort of thing, I think does contribute to it. And they did mention that in the study as well, that the kids who ate at home and not really ate a lot of processed foods and fast foods and stuff like that, not eating out of a box, basically, that their nutrient levels were much, much higher. They ate less as well, but the important calories were still getting to them. So they had a healthier diet overall. Many of them are still obese, obviously, because that's sort of, an overeating habit, as well as not picking the best foods for them. But their diet was much, much better, and their weight was lower than the kids who were eating at fast food restaurants and, just eating prepackaged things. They did notice that there was a difference there for the better. So it's nice to know that there is at least that scientific evidence out there that's saying, yes, eating at home is going to be much, much better. Obviously, I think the main problem with that is the time constraint more than the money. Because pound for pound, you're looking at, it's actually cheaper to buy the whole food and prepare it that way. So I think it's just a matter of, trying to figure out how to juggle so many things going on at once and being able to prepare that for your kids. And then last week we talked about how, but some people would classify as picky eaters and things like that, how their taste buds are a little bit different and they're going to taste things differently. So, of course, they're sort of gravitating more towards things that are high in fat and high in sugar because that's what tastes good. So, I mean, there are a number of different things that contribute to it, but I think a big part of it is probably our habits that we sort of pass down to them. That if you grew up in a household where they ate fresh food, well, again, I'm not going to try to turn like hippie granola or anything like that, but that when they bought their produce, they bought fresh meat, and that's what they would prepare, that you had a variety of different things right from the onset, you're going to carry those on into adulthood. So your diet is going to be better, your health is going to be better, your nutrition levels are going to be much, much better than they would be compared to someone who just grew up at McDonald's and Burger King and eating toaster or Pop-Tarts. Toaster thing. What was I going to say? Toaster thing. Filtered fruit toaster discs. It's just a generic brand name. That's what we're going to call them. But there is going to be obviously a difference there. Activity level is important as well. But again, I think it's much more aimed at what we eat and how we eat more than exercising. I mean, you could go to McDonald's every single day and exercise. Compare that same amount of exercise and the same number of calories to someone who eats, properly. And I think that they're probably going to be doing a lot better than the fast food person. So, getting off topic again. With this study, though, it really was a bit surprising that they had to go that far back. And that's what really sort of sticks in my head. It's very good that we've sort of, well, not very good, but you know what I mean. It's good that we've plateaued, it's good that we haven't gone higher in the past 10 years or so. I mean, it's been fluctuating, obviously, but overall, we're hovering at around somewhere between 13 and 17%, which is still insanely high. But the fact that it hasn't been 13 and 17%, and then 2 years later it's gone up another percent, and then another and another, the fact that we've sort of reached where we feel our comfort level is at having our obese kids, that's at least encouraging. Because now it's going to be a little easier. Instead of just saying, well, first thing we need to do is to stop the increase, and stop that rate of increase. Screwed that up. Anyway, and then try to get back down to where we need to be, where we've sort of stayed at that same level for quite a while now. It may be a little bit easier to start getting those down. And there are a few things we've talked about before as well that they're looking at, like taking vending machines out of schools, just so that, or trying to replace it with something healthier instead of just always having pop vending machines in there. There was a fat tax that Canada was talking about a while ago, which I still think that they probably should do. Just a number of different things that they think, just these little things here and there are going to make a big difference in the long run. Not just necessarily to say, well, this food is banned, you can't have this or anything else, but obviously it is making some kind of a difference. Even if it is like Quebec did with their advertising, something like that, something very simple. It's fine. We're adults. We can take the advertising and we can go, oh, I really, really want that. Or no, I don't want that. Or I shouldn't have that, but I'm still going to buy it. We can make those decisions, like the Jujubes. We can make those decisions for ourselves. We should be making them for our kids as well. But you hear the argument over and over that people go, oh, well, it's an uphill battle. It's really tough. It's, they prefer these sorts of treats. And, well, you're their parent. Say no. And if you notice that your kid is starting to sort of follow in your footsteps as you were when you were a kid and you know what they're headed for, then we need to do something about it, obviously. We need to make those changes. So, and it's easier once we start in with ourselves that we can sort of share that with them because they're going to want to do it anyway. That came out weird. I don't mean that they're going to say, oh, well, obviously mom and dad are doing this, so I'm going to do this as well. Just the fact that it's much easier if your entire household is going through the same thing and you've decided to make those changes, that they will fall in line. Anyway, yes, it's not going to be easy, obviously. We still like, the cookies and candies and cakes and everything else. So, it's as an adult, it's a little easier for us to control it. So you are going to get some pushback. So it's not just a matter of them going, oh, well, great, they're serving me carrots now. Awesome. There is going to be a bit of a fight, but it's going to be worth it in the long run. So, anyway, I'm going to try to cut this very short, and I've gone over anyway. I'm sorry. Anyway, I'm going to put the little news blurb down in the description below, as well as it's a few pages long. It's mainly just a PDF, so it's not just very dry. It's not the actual study. Just some highlights from the study as well to show some statistic. Try that one more. Try that one more time. I was going to say it twice. Let's try that, comma. Again, no comma. That's wrong. Let's try that one more time. There we go. Sorry. This is why these videos are so long, because I can't speak properly. Anyway, I'll put those in there so you can take a look at those. And at the very least, it's just a quick little overview and fairly interesting to watch. But that's it. We're going to keep things nice and neat and tidy. Just wanted to share a little bit of news. It's a couple of days old at this point, depending on when you're watching this. I always assume that you're watching within a few days. By the time you read this, this might be old news. Read this. See what happens? See what you've done? By the time you see this, it may be old news. Unless you're reading the captions below, in which case, then yes, you are reading this later. Anyway. Okay, I'm going to cut this short because this has just been a fucking train wreck. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked it, please poke the like button for me. In the meantime, keep yourself warm and fuzzy, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.